Meteor Dale's adventure and travel's latest challenge is to do every railway service in the UK over many, many years. Please enjoy watching.
Today, going to the furthest northeastern point on the British railway system. Zigzag. Yeah. See how the day goes. I've got a coffee anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to start the hotel into Inverness station. And there's our train. There's the seats on the ScotRail 158 with a destination screen, information screen. We have USBs and 3-pin sockets. We have a very good luggage rack for this line. Sealed doors, armrests. What else? A table, of course. I am sitting out front of the luggage rack for a bit of privacy. Yeah, very nice. Now the problem is I'm on this train until 7 o'clock. Well, except for a 1 hour break in Wick. Good luck to me, I say. And that over there will be my train on Tuesday when I go down to London from Inverness in first class. Should be interesting. I went to Thurso last March, but I have never been to Wick, so this is quite the first time in my life. I've always wanted to go there, so pretty good. Yes. As usual, microphone was not on. It's now on. Duh.
Board is 700-hour ScotRail service to Thurso and Wick. This train will call at Bewley, Muirabord, Cullenbridge, Dingwall, Inverness, Invergordon, Fern, Tain, Ardguy, Lairg, Golspie, Rora, Helmsdale, Forsyth, George Junction, to arrive at Thurso at 10:59, and then call in at George Junction, and to arrive at Wick at 11:31. We also don't have any quiz stops, such as Coleraine, Invershin, Rother, Dunrobin Castle, Kildonan, Kimbrace, Altnabreg and Scots Calder.
to drizzle out there, light rain. The Bewley Firth. Shame about the weather. The weather is not ideal. It's raining. That's the radar.
We are now approaching Bewley.
Approaching the Muir of Ord. And that is 158709, 722 to Inverness. So it's quite a new looking station. Very small. Here's Kernan Bridge.
Stop is Inverness.
This is Dingwall. I stayed here last March in a B&B straight across the road. Very nice indeed. So just after Dingwall, the Cowport Couch line splits off to the left and the Far North line goes off to the right. And there it is, the Cowport Couch branch. Did that last year. Very nice. There's the Comedy Forth. On the map between Dingwall and Inverness, there's a disused airfield, and there's a causeway that goes out into the Comedy Firth. Not sure if that's still a runway, or was a runway, but it's quite significant on the map. After Inverness is Invergordon, which used to be, or is still, I'm not sure, an aluminium smelting plant, and a naval base.
That is called Campus Curry Bay. So this is the Dornoch Firth. We follow that quite a long way inland. As far as the Kincardine Bridge. I remember staying at a youth hostel at Carbisdale Castle not far from there. Very nice views and very nice accommodation it was. That was about 40 years ago. Actually, it was about 44 years ago. I'm older than I think. But I'm nearly 61. We're doing 71 miles an hour. I remember cycling near here about 45 years ago, and I was mesmerised by the scenes of the low clouds against the hills and the calm waters and the mirror reflections. First time I've seen it, so yeah, it was really good. I was on a 4-week tour when I was about 16 years old, camping. I went all the way to the Outer Hebrides. I actually caught a train actually to near Aberdeen, but then I cycled all the way back. Yeah, that's it. I think it cost me like £50 for a 4-week holiday. I ran out of money at the end though. So now we're coming towards the end of the Dornoch Firth, where it turns into a river, and then there's another like a loch before we cross over it. Then we head north.
We are now approaching our guy. Please.
And there's the station.
This is our guy. This train is for Wick. The next stop is Coleraine.
And there's Carbisdale Castle Youth Hostel on the hillside.
We are now approaching Inverness. This is a request stop. Please mind the gap when alighting from this train.
Another request stop. We're not stopping. In fishing. So when we get to the end of this glen with all these trees, it comes out at a loch, and then we go southeast back towards the coast. It seems to be doubling back on itself.
But that's the way the line is. That's all part of the fun. I got nothing to eat. There's no trolley service. But we get to Wick about 11:30. It's now 8:41. So quite a while, no breakfast or coffee. But I got a bakery to look forward to. Yeah, it's always good to be at the front of the train in case there's any wild animals. Plus, because if you're at the front, they're still there before they run away to the woods. So yeah, it's quite funny. Do you see that? Which I saw something strange. Yeah, it's Hyman Cattles around here.
This is lairg. This train is for Wick. The next stop is Rogart.
Train to Inverness just arrived on the platform. Looks like they changed drivers here. It's a green train. Quite a long stop here. The station is called lairg. Next stop is Rogart, but that's a request stop. And then Goldsby and the Robin Castle, which is also a request stop. So that train going the other way set off from Wick at 6:18 this morning. So even earlier than us. The train is running on time. So there's my phone charging on the other table, now at 5%. Lots of heather at Moland.
We are now approaching Rogart. This is a request stop. Please mind the gap when alighting from this train.
See all the ghosts across there?
That's Ruga. And here's the request stop. Little woodyard. So we go down there towards the sea. So another 2 hours to go on this amazing journey, and then an hour there, and then I come back. Look at that sand. Tides out. Here's Goldsby. Tends to have, looks like it has one platform. There's your station building. Big chimney. What a fine building. A mighty fine building. It's a police box. Doctor Who's here. Did you see that? There is a TARDIS on the station. Wow. The next stop is Dunrobin Castle, a part-time station. I think it's closed all the winter. And a request stop. Interesting little place.
We are now approaching Dunrobin Castle. This is a request stop. Please mind the gap when alighting from this train.
So that's the A9 down there. And there's the castle. Just make it out in the trees.
This is Dunrobin Castle. This train is for Wick. The next stop is Brora.
Looks like it used to have its own little platform for supplies. Yeah, I noticed doing this YouTube lark, you end up managing the charging of your devices a lot of the time. 3 batteries for the camera, a phone battery, an iPad battery, a camera battery, and a laptop. I hope I'm loud enough in this microphone. I won't know till later.
We are now approaching Brora. Please mind the gap when alighting from this train.
Probably only one platform. Little clock tower. No, it has 2 platforms and 2 tracks. So that's where we are in Great Britain. There's Inverness down there, and we've gone up there on a weekly line. Wick is about there. There, that's Wick. And that's Thurso. So you go there and there. We are here, and that's it. still in Devon. That's Helmsdale over there. That's when we leave the sea. Feet above sea level. That makes sense. That's the A9.
We are now approaching Helmsdale. Please mind the gap when alighting from this train.
Time flies when you're having fun. Cat in the window. Signal box no longer used. Now we go up the glen. Just missed it.
mind the gap when alighting from this train. This is Thurso. This train is for Wick. The next stop is Inverness.
Lambs on it, lambs, 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 lambs. Barrier. This seems to be neglected these days. Not so much snow, I guess. The Merlin goes on and on and on. This is quite a remote station.
We are now approaching Inverness. This is a request stop. Please mind the gap when alighting from this train. This is Inverness. This train is for Wick. The next stop is Thurso.
550 feet. And climbing. That's why it's getting foggy.
We are now approaching Forsenard.
Single track. That's where we are, North East Scotland, the far North East, and there's Orkney there. The weather is well, dull, murky, wet, misty. As we cross the moors of North East Scotland and forestry. This section is the highest part of the far north line, so I will film it. .675 feet. Looks a bit like London round here. River Thames.
This is Scott Calder. This train is for Wick. The next stop is Georgemas Junction. We are now approaching Georgemas Junction. Please mind the gap when alighting from this train.
Window's gone quite mucky now. And that's where we just came from.
This train is for Wick. This train will call at Thurso, Georgemas Junction, and Wick. The next stop is Thurso.
Sorry about the dirty windows currently. They were quite clean, but the rain made it muddy. There's really not a lot to see between Georgemas Junction and Thurso. Just unusual because it's North Scotland.
We are now approaching Thurso.
Looks like there's a siding there for the seagulls. Seagull train. Bye bye seagulls. Guess this is where Wikipedia comes from. This one actually goes inside a shed.